Kennedy announced his retirement from the Supreme Court yesterday. It immediately sparked a severe reaction from Democratic politicians. Here's part of it.
We're looking at a destruction of the Constitution of the United States, as far as I can tell.
President Trump has said that he wants to nominate people to the Supreme Court who will overturn Roe v. Wade, so he's going to look for somebody like that.
The bottom line is this is obviously an enormously important issue. Everything to do with women's rights, having to do with gay rights, having to do with solidifying the pro-corporate, anti-worker wing of the Supreme Court. I think what we're looking for is the nomination of a right-wing extremist.
Molly Hemingway is a senior editor at The Federalist, and she joins us now. So Bernie's telling us this is the nomination of a right-wing extremist. Does he know who's getting the nomination? I hadn't heard.
Yeah, we have no idea who's getting the nomination, although we do have a list of potential nominees from President Trump. But what I think this speaks to is that people really have a lot of interest in the Supreme Court because the Supreme Court itself has so much power, and it has done so much in recent decades to really push issues even over and against the way that the people have voted, and particularly when it comes to liberal social activism. You have seen just a tremendous push by the court to overturn what people have voted on, and it means that the Supreme Court has, in many ways, too much power when the resignation of one person can cause so much anxiety by people on both left and right.
Well, that's exactly right. It's not a healthy democracy when the least democratic institution has the most power. But how can you denounce someone as a right-wing extremist before you know who that person is? I mean, is that a little weird? Was it always this way? Well, the rhetoric seems to be getting more intense.
It's weird. Just think of with the nomination of Anthony Kennedy back in the 1980s, which happened itself after President Reagan had nominated Bork, and that vote was declined by a Democratic Senate, and then his replacement, Ginsburg, ended up withdrawing. Kennedy was nominated by Reagan and turned out to be a jurist who advanced quite a bit of liberal social activism, whether that was redefining marriage to include same-sex couples, or Roe v. Wade was a very poorly written decision, and Kennedy did a lot to save that with the Casey decision. So you don't even know what you're getting when a Republican, even someone like Ronald Reagan, nominates you. So people should just wait until they find out who is nominated and evaluate the person and their judicial philosophy at that time.
Exactly. Only Republican nominees get more liberal. Democratic nominees never get more conservative, ever.
Interesting.
Molly Hemingway, thank you.
Thanks.
It's amazing. Reactions to Kennedy's retirement on Twitter, of course, are even stronger than those on television because everybody brings out his worst self on Twitter. Think Progress editor Ian Millhiser tweeted this, among other things, F you, Justice Kennedy. Comedy Central writer Curtis Cook said this, quote, I wish this Kennedy had been shot instead of the other ones. Just another happy day on progressive Twitter. Law professor and Democratic candidate Richard Painter, who's now running for Senate, wrote this, quote, no new Supreme Court nominations by Trump to replace Justice Kennedy, none. He is in blatant violation of the Constitution and must be impeached. Senate and House Judiciary Committee hearings are way past due. I have had it with appeasement of aspiring dictators. He was clearly sweating and shouting as he wrote that. Richard Goodstein is a much calmer man, also an attorney. He advised Hillary Clinton's presidential campaigns. He joins us tonight. So, Richard, I thought that the critique of Trump from the left was that he was violating democratic norms. But the democratic norm is the elected president gets to nominate to fill vacancies on the Supreme Court, which Trump is doing because, again, he's president. But now we're hearing that he shouldn't be allowed to do that. So how can you be for democratic norms but oppose that?
Well, that wasn't the precedent that was followed with Merrick Garland, was it? So, look,
no, it wasn't. You're right.
I'm not saying that whether it's the Biden rule or McConnell rule, I think that's frankly silly talk. What alarms people, you're talking about a meltdown. What alarms people is Donald Trump said that women should be punished for having an abortion, that their doctor should be treated criminally. You had 20 Republican state legislators in Ohio today advance a position that women should get the death penalty who have abortions. So if any of your viewers have somebody in their family or a friend that they know of who's had an abortion, that person should be scared to death. That they have a friend who's gay,
nobody thinks
that behavior was criminalized.
Let me ask you, since you've been always no, that's just silly. Let me ask you a question.
I defended
since it's always about abortion. How many? Wait, hold on. How many Okay, right. Hold on. But how many? Is it a sincere question?
Yeah.
How many abortions, more abortions, do we need till we get really happy? Like, what's the ideal number of abortions, would you say, in America?
They should be
what's
safe,
abortion
legal, and
nirvana?
rare.
How many?
But they shouldn't
but
be.
how many should we have? Because the idea
well,
is that whenever you restrict abortion, it's bad. How many would make this country like a great country again?
So I'll tell you what.
Would you say?
That's a very dismissive view of the views of women who think they should have control over their bodies. Of course, we should have as few abortions
you never
as
met
possible.
Any pro-life women?
But the women who choose to go that route should not be put in jail. And if Donald Trump and these legislators in Ohio and elsewhere around the country have their way, that's what's going to happen.
No one believes this, Gar. It's too dumb. It's too dumb. Look, you don't even. Here's what's dumb. You don't even know. Wait, stop. Hold on, Chris. So Donald Trump's a big pro-life activist now. Okay, let's just stop BSing the audience here.
Right.
Let's ask a sincere question. Isn't it kind of an insult to the intelligence of everybody that Democrats are attacking a nominee when there isn't a nominee? Shouldn't you hear the person's positions before you dismiss him? Or is it just anybody nominated is bad?
Yeah,
That's like a dumb person position, isn't it?
Donald Trump did something running for president that most presidential candidates didn't do. He said, I'm going to have a litmus test, which is I want to reverse Roe versus Wade. He also, again, said that these women should be treated criminally. So we're just taking him at his word, and we're looking at this list of people he's put out.
He's not nominating himself to the Supreme Court. Okay. And it's always about abortion. I guess that's where the money comes from, or like...
You know
the
what?
idea is,
climate change is not about abortion.
That's happiness or something.
There's a lot of issues on which Justice Kennedy was